Oggi iniziamo con un personaggio straordinario, formatosi in economia e sociologia, è conosciuto al di fuori del mondo accademico per il suo impegno sociale. Bisogna dire che il suo impegno è tutt'altro che acquiescente, quindi vi preparo già a questo. È un attivista che ha imparato a analizzare i problemi partendo dagli attori che sono coinvolti in questi. Signori, a voi, Raj Patel.
I'm here to talk about measure. My ancestors are from India, and my parents wanted me to have a good connection with India. And so they took me when I was 6 years old to India to visit the places of my ancestors. We were in a small taxi, and it was raining outside. And there was a little girl, and in her hands she had a baby. And the baby was screaming and screaming and screaming. And the girl was knocking, 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 and asking for money. And soon, inside the car, I was screaming and screaming and screaming. And I wanted to know why. Why were we inside the car and dry? And why was she outside in the wet? Why did we have money and she did not? Why was she begging and we giving? And my parents couldn't answer these questions, and I never saw her again. But I carry her around with me every day. And so I prepared all my life to work for organizations that fought poverty. People within this organization are very committed to changing the world and to fighting poverty. The trouble is that the policies that this organization makes are bad. They are destructive to the kinds of change that are really necessary in developing countries. And so I worked very briefly for the World Bank, and then I left. And I joined the global justice movement. And we have protested around the world, and we're saying that there is not just one way of measuring and of counting the world. Let's try valuing the world differently. In America last year, we had a very high level of crops. There was a lot of food in America last year, produced through this agriculture system. But last year, 49 million Americans in the richest country on earth, producing food from this system, went hungry. This kind of agriculture requires a lot of inputs. It requires a lot of water, it generates a lot of pollution, it needs a lot of fossil fuel. Every American consumes roughly 2,000 liters of gasoline every year just to be able to make their food through this unsustainable system. Agroecological system is one of the earliest forms of sophisticated crop science. It's an entirely different way of farming. It's not a monoculture, it's a polyculture, and it's a much better system. You are much more healthy as a result. And the benefit of this agroecological system is not just you don't need inputs, you can save the world. If every farming system was like this, we could sequester 40% of all man-made carbon emissions. That's more than any other technology to date. 40% of anthropogenic carbon emissions just through sustainable farming. I didn't hear about this kind of agriculture from the World Bank. I heard about it from an international peasant movement called La Via Campesina. I met La Via Campesina first when I was protesting in Seattle against the World Trade Organization. We were marching in the streets, and there was this beautiful sea of farmers wearing green and waving their green banners. And they represented to me the most hopeful kind of globalization. A globalization where you learn from one another. A globalization where you share. Food sovereignty is about a right to have rights over your food system. This is a very different model from what the World Bank, for example, is saying. For too long in agriculture, as well as other things, mistakes have been made by someone else, and we have to live with the consequences. We all need to get involved in shaping our food system. But that means that we have to tackle the food system at every level. People don't talk about this much, but today there are 1 billion people who are going hungry, and 60% of them are women. Food sovereignty is about an end to all forms of violence against women. If we are interested in tackling inequalities in power, then we must tackle the violence against women, not only in the household, but the violence that stops girls being educated, the violence that stops women being able to sell their goods in the market. We need to hold ourselves to account for what we have imposed on developing countries. But that's not all bad. There are ways in which we can learn from everyone around the world who has these production systems. And by redistributing so that everyone shares, equality makes everyone better off. And generosity makes us happiest. We will be happier people when we share, not when we impose, but when we learn from one another. Because when I'm connected to everyone, I disappear. There is no, in being excellent, you lose yourself. And when you're connected to everyone, that's the best thing that can happen.